Hello guys, before we begin, I want to speak directly into the heart of every woman who has ever felt misunderstood, misjudged, or misplaced. This is not a message for the crowd, pleasers. This is not a message for those who need validation to breathe. This is a message for the women who carry the weight of wisdom in silence, who walk paths few even dare to glance at, who stand alone, not because they are weak, but because they are called. You, my sister, may not be in the spotlight, but you are a force of nature. You are a Sigma woman. There is a kind of woman who doesn't need a microphone to be heard. She doesn't need a spotlight to be seen. She doesn't crave recognition, nor does she hunger for applause. She is not driven by the need to prove herself to anyone. She has discovered something more valuable than validation. She has discovered herself. And once a woman becomes aware of who she truly is, the world begins to notice her even when she says nothing. She does not enter a room looking for attention, but attention finds her anyway. There's something about her that makes people pause, not because of what she wears, not because of how loud she is, but because of the strength that radiates from her very being. It's in her walk. It's in her stillness. It's in her refusal to entertain anything beneath her calling. She walks with authority, not because someone gave her permission, but because she gave it to herself. She is grounded in her identity, and that alone makes her unforgettable. This kind of woman does not need to explain her journey to people who were never assigned to walk it with her. She doesn't rush to clarify herself when misunderstood, because she knows that understanding is not a prerequisite for obedience. She is not here to be figured out. She is here to fulfill a purpose, and when you're built for purpose, distraction becomes an insult. So she stays focused, even when others are watching, wondering, whispering. She is not loud in voice, but she is loud in impact. She doesn't boast of her victories because the evidence of her life is testimony enough. While others are busy narrating their journeys for attention, she is letting the fruit of her labor speak volumes. Her results are undeniable. Her presence is disruptive, not because she tries to cause a stir, but because she represents a standard. She reminds others of what's possible when you don't give up, when you don't fold, when you stop asking for permission and start walking in divine intention. People sense something different about her. They may not be able to name it, but they can feel it. She doesn't entertain small talk when her soul is craving meaningful dialogue. She doesn't participate in gossip when her mind is occupied with vision. She doesn't chase clout because she is chasing destiny. And while many mistake her solitude for arrogance, they fail to realize that she isn't alone because she has no one. She's alone because she chose to be. There is wisdom in her silence. In her stillness she is gathering strength. In her absence, she is recharging for the next assignment. She's not withdrawn, she's strategic. She's not cold, she's protected. She's not passive, she's intentional, and because of that, she carries a kind of mystery that pulls people in. They want to know her secret. They want to understand what fuels her resilience. But what they don't realize is that it's not just her own strength that sustains her. It's her connection to something greater than herself. She doesn't need to control every room, because she trusts the one who orders her steps. That's why she's calm in chaos. That's why she's composed when others are unraveling. She's learned how to hold her peace even in war zones. She's mastered the art of carrying herself with grace when the world expects her to break. She knows who she is, and more importantly, she knows whose she is. This woman has walked through seasons that would have destroyed others, but she came out of them stronger, wiser, and more discerning. She's had to rebuild herself in silence, piece by piece, prayer by prayer, tear by tear. She's cried behind closed doors, but showed up in public like she was unshaken. She's wrestled with God in private, asking questions that had no answers, and yet she rose again. This time not with clarity, but with faith, faith enough to keep going, faith enough to stand tall, faith enough to trust that even her silence has a sound in the spirit. She's not the woman who brags about the battles she's won, because most people didn't even know she was in a fight. She doesn't need to recount her trials to gain sympathy. She's not after sympathy, she's after strategy. She doesn't want people to feel sorry for her. She wants to fulfill her purpose with precision, so she trains in the dark, she builds in the quiet, she grows when no one is watching, and when the time comes she steps forward, not to impress but to impact. You see, she is not chasing fame, she is not trying to keep up with others, she is not measuring her worth by timelines, trends, or titles. She's learned to measure her progress by obedience. Has she followed what she was called to do? Has she grown closer to who she's becoming? That's what matters to her. And because of that mindset, she cannot be manipulated by false praise or intimidated by false criticism. She is not easily swayed. She does not panic under pressure. She listens more than she speaks, and when she does speak, her words carry weight. They are not fluffed up with ego or hollow with insecurity. They are rooted in lived experience. They are shaped by discernment, and they are spoken with love and clarity. People lean in when she talks because they sense that what she's saying has been tested in the fire. Even when she is overlooked, underestimated, or misunderstood, she doesn't flinch. She knows that timing is everything. She knows that being hidden is not the same as being forgotten. In fact, she welcomes the seasons of concealment, because she understands that preparation happens in the shadows, not in the spotlight. And when the time is right, when the season has matured, when the assignment is ready, she steps forward with no need for explanation, no need for validation, because her work, her growth, her very being speaks louder than words ever could. She has discovered that the quietest power is often the most disruptive, that you don't have to shout to shake the ground, that you don't have to fight for space when you were born to shift atmospheres. She is the kind of woman who causes change by being, not by striving. She embodies what it means to walk with dignity, to carry grace, and to lead without demanding attention. And while the world keeps turning up its volume, trying to outshout each other, she is turning inward. She's listening for direction, she's listening for truth, she's listening for the whisper that guides her next step, because she knows that true power doesn't always make noise. Sometimes it simply moves, quietly, confidently, and undeniably. So if you ever come across her, don't mistake her silence for absence. Don't confuse her stillness for passivity, and certainly don't interpret her peace as weakness. She is a storm wrapped in calm, a fire disguised as grace. And though she may walk without a crowd, she walks with purpose, and true purpose, needs no introduction. She is not here to entertain, she is here to transform, and whether the world claps or not, she keeps moving. Because she knows who she is. There is a woman who lives differently. While many are swayed by trends, chasing approval, and measuring success by visibility, she walks another path. She has made a choice, a rare, radical, sometimes lonely choice. She has chosen to follow purpose, and because of that, she will not always be understood. Her steps don't make sense to people whose lives are shaped by performance. She doesn't dance to the rhythm of applause, and that confuses those who live for it. She isn't trying to go viral, she's trying to go deep. This woman is not indifferent. She simply understands the difference between being seen and being sent. She knows that popularity can be a trap disguised as a platform. And she has seen what happens when people chase influence without integrity, exposure without foundation, image without identity. So she turned her back on the temporary comfort of approval and said yes to something more costly, something eternal. Purpose is not always glamorous. It does not always come with affirmation. Often it demands silence, solitude, and sacrifice. It may call her into seasons where there are no fans cheering, no followers clapping, and no one watching. But even in those moments she moves forward, not because she feels like it, but because she was called to it. She understands that obedience is more powerful than popularity, and her goal is not to impress the crowd. It is to honor her assignment. This woman has learned to trust the still, small voice that speaks in the quiet moments, the one that whispers clarity when the noise of the world tries to distract. She knows what it means to be led, not by applause, but by alignment. She wakes up not asking, "What will people think?" but "What was I born to do?" And because of that question, her life looks different. Her choices are deliberate. Her silence is strategic. Her movements are sacred. She doesn't follow trends because she has already found truth, and that truth holds her steady when everything around her seems uncertain. She doesn't waste energy trying to be palatable to everyone, because she knows she wasn't created to be easily consumed. She was created to disrupt, to challenge, to build, and to elevate. Her assignment demands more than likability. It demands authenticity. She has tasted the sweetness of applause before. It's not that she's never had it. In fact, she knows what it feels like to be admired, to be complimented, to be celebrated. But she also knows how fleeting it is. She has seen how quickly people can cheer for you one day and forget you the next. She knows how praise can inflate the ego while slowly starving the soul, and she refuses to live in the prison of other people's opinions. That's why she's dangerous, because she's free. There were moments when she questioned herself, moments when she looked around and saw others rising fast, cutting corners, compromising truth for influence, and wondered if her pace was too slow. But every time doubt knocked, she was reminded that she's not building for the moment. She's building for the mission, and mission takes time. It takes foundation. It takes pruning. She has learned to celebrate slow growth, because anything that lasts is never rushed. While others are chasing platforms, she is chasing impact. Her focus is not on being everywhere, it's on being effective where she is. She would rather influence one life deeply than entertain 1,000 superficially. Because she knows that true legacy is not built by moments of attention, but by a lifetime of intention. So she wakes up with discipline, she shows up with consistency, she speaks with conviction, and she works, often unseen, often unthanked, but never unfocused. There are days when she feels the weight of walking a narrow road, when her refusal to follow the crowd leaves her standing alone. But even then, she finds peace in the solitude, knowing that the path of purpose was never meant to be crowded. She finds strength in remembering that even the most powerful seeds spend time buried before they bloom, and she trusts that what is being formed in private will one day speak for itself in public. This woman doesn't need everyone to agree with her. She doesn't need a crowd to validate her calling. She has learned to carry the vision even when others can't see it. She holds onto the fire inside her even when the world tries to pour water on it. She doesn't wait for others to believe in her, because she believes in what God placed inside of her, and that belief is what fuels her. She doesn't perform, she pursues, she doesn't manipulate, she moves with meaning. She's not looking for attention, she's looking for alignment. Her life is not defined by external approval, but by internal obedience, and that's what makes her powerful. That's what makes her rare. That's what makes her a force to be reckoned with. She knows that walking in purpose will cost her something. It may cost her relationships that couldn't handle her depth. It may cost her opportunities that wanted her to compromise. It may cost her comfort, popularity, and ease. But it will give her peace. It will give her clarity. It will give her the kind of impact that can't be measured by numbers, but by transformation. She is the kind of woman who will keep showing up even when no one notices. She will keep doing the work even when no one claps, because she's not doing it for the crowd. She's doing it for the call. And when the time is right, when the foundation has been laid, when the lessons have been learned, she will rise. Not because she pushed her way forward, but because she grew into it. Not because she demanded attention, but because she became undeniable. The world may not understand her now. They may question her silence, her pace, her priorities. But she knows that some things cannot be explained. They can only be revealed in time. And when the fruit of her purpose begins to blossom, it will be evident that she was never behind. She was simply being prepared. So let them chase the applause. Let them race to be seen. She will continue to walk in purpose, steady, focused, free. And when the dust settles, and the noise fades, and the lights dim, her life will still be speaking. Because purpose never needed popularity to be powerful, there comes a time in a woman's life when she no longer entertains chaos, not because she's become bitter or distant, but because she's grown. She's seen what happens when she spreads herself too thin. She's learned what it costs to pour into spaces that only leave her empty. So now, she has chosen to protect what she spent years trying to find, her peace. There is a quiet strength in her decisions. She no longer moves with urgency to be everywhere, do everything, or please everyone. She walks with a stillness that is both unsettling and inspiring. She doesn't allow every voice into her ear, every opinion into her mind, or every presence into her life. She has become discerning, and not out of fear, but out of wisdom, because she knows that not every hand clapping for her is clean, not every smile is sincere. Not every offer is aligned with her assignment. And now she understands that protecting her space isn't selfish, it's sacred. She has learned the difference between being available and being accessible, between being kind and being used, between being present and being drained. This woman understands the cost of unguarded energy. She's lived through it. She's given too much in places that only took. She's stayed too long in circles that kept her small. She said yes when her spirit was whispering no. And those lessons taught her something no book ever could, that peace must be chosen daily, that joy doesn't just happen, it must be nurtured, and that alignment isn't automatic. It requires boundaries. So now she watches closely, not out of paranoia, but out of purpose. She has work to do, a calling to honor, and a life to live fully. And she knows she can't do any of that while entertaining every distraction, responding to every call, or fixing what was never hers to carry. She doesn't explain herself anymore. She doesn't justify her absence or her silence. She knows that those who truly understand her path will respect her pace, and those who don't, they were never meant to walk beside her anyway. She's made peace with being misunderstood, if that's the price of being whole. This woman is not rude, she is rooted. She is not distant, she is disciplined. She is not cold, she is clear. And that clarity gives her the strength to say no without guilt, to step away without drama, and to prioritize her well-being without apology. She has learned that her spirit is a garden, and gardens don't grow just because you want them to. They grow because you tend them, protect them, remove the weeds, give them light and water, and that's what she's doing, tending to the soil of her soul, choosing what she lets in, being careful about what she entertains, refusing to allow her peace to be trampled on by people who don't value the atmosphere she's fought to cultivate. She knows what it costs to live distracted. She's felt the heaviness of carrying what wasn't hers. She's cried tears over expectations she never asked to bear. And now she chooses freedom, not the kind that's loud and boastful, but the kind that sits quietly in her spirit, the kind that shows up in her posture, her decisions, her schedule, the kind that says, "I love you, but I will not abandon myself to keep you comfortable." She's not building walls, she's building standards. She's not avoiding people. She's choosing wholeness. She's not isolating, she's elevating. And elevation requires separation, separation from noise, separation from drama, separation from the constant pressure to be everywhere but here, because she is here now, present in her own life, attentive to her own needs, listening to her own heart, and that presence has become her superpower. She is no longer reactive, she is responsive. She is no longer consumed, she is conscious. And because of that, she has become magnetic, not because she's seeking attention, but because she carries authenticity. People wonder how she keeps her peace, how she moves so gracefully, how she avoids the chaos while still remaining compassionate, and the answer is simple. She chooses herself daily, not in arrogance, but in awareness. She knows that when she is well, everything around her flourishes, her relationships deepen, her vision sharpens, her spirit softens, and her work bears fruit. She no longer apologizes for resting, for logging off, for saying no, for disappearing to recharge, because she knows that her best self doesn't emerge from exhaustion. It emerges from restoration. She has made rest a rhythm, not a reward. She no longer believes the lie that burnout is proof of value. She knows now that real impact requires sustainability, and sustainability requires boundaries. And those boundaries, they are not barriers. They are bridges, bridges to a life where she can show up fully. Bridges to relationships that are rooted in reciprocity. Bridges to spaces that don't just tolerate her, but honor her. She is not available for anything less than what aligns with where she's going. She has tasted the fruit of a focused life. She has witnessed the miracles that happen when she guards her space. She has experienced what it means to finally feel safe in her own body, mind, and spirit. And now she won't settle for anything that threatens that safety. Not a relationship, not an opportunity, not even a thought. She has grown, and growth has taught her that everyone can't go with her. Not because she's better, but because she's different, because where she's going requires clarity, requires strength, requires selectivity, and she's okay with that. She doesn't need a crowd, she just needs alignment. She knows now that her energy is currency, that her time is an investment, that her attention is sacred, and she spends each one wisely. She no longer allows herself to be pulled into unnecessary battles, endless conversations, or toxic environments. She is intentional with her steps and unapologetic with her space, because she finally knows the truth. Her peace is not negotiable. Her joy is not up for discussion. Her worth is not on the table, and her spirit is not for public consumption. So she walks tall, even if she walks alone. She speaks gently, but she means every word. She loves deeply, but she does not abandon herself in the process. She gives freely, but not foolishly. And above all, she protects her energy, not because she's trying to be exclusive, but because she understands that her life depends on it. There is something remarkable about a woman who doesn't just endure pain, she learns from it. She doesn't just survive what was meant to break her, she transforms because of it, and not in ways the world can always see. Her victories are often quiet. Her lessons are often earned in solitude, but make no mistake, she is rising. Not because everything around her is easy, but because everything within her is anchored. She has lived through storms that others only heard about. She has walked through fires that left no smoke, but scarred her in places no one else could see. She knows what it means to cry in silence, to smile through heartbreak, to show up strong when she's trembling on the inside. And though the world may celebrate her success, she knows that her strength was forged in the dark, that her wisdom wasn't born on the mountaintop, but in the valley. She has come to understand that pain has been one of her greatest teachers. People may applaud her now. They may admire her resilience, her poise, her confidence. But what they don't see are the nights she wrestled with doubt, the mornings she had to will herself out of bed, the prayers she prayed not to be seen, but to be sustained. They don't know how many times she was overlooked, underestimated, or taken for granted. But none of that defines her. What defines her is that she never stopped learning, never stopped growing, never stopped becoming. She understands now that pain is not the enemy. Pain is a messenger. It doesn't come to destroy, but to reveal. To uncover what's fragile, to expose what's real, to stretch what's too small, and she has learned not to run from it, but to lean into it, to ask, what is this trying to teach me? instead of "Why is this happening to me?" Because she knows that wisdom isn't found in the avoidance of hardship, but in the transformation that comes through it. She's been betrayed, but it taught her discernment. She's been abandoned, but it taught her how to stand on her own. She's been talked about, lied on, and misunderstood, but it taught her how to walk in truth without needing validation. She's lost people she thought would always be there, but it taught her how to love without clinging. And through it all, she has become more compassionate, more grounded, more whole. The world often celebrates the praise, the awards, the recognition, the spotlight, but she knows the applause doesn't make you wise. Compliments don't build character. Admiration doesn't teach endurance. That kind of growth comes in silence, in the hidden places, in the breaking, and in the rebuilding. She remembers the moments when everything fell apart, when nothing made sense, when the ground beneath her felt like it was giving way, and yet even then, especially then, something sacred was happening, the kind of growth you don't ask for but desperately need, the kind of fire that burns off what's false and leaves only what's true. She didn't just go through the pain, she let the pain go through her, she let it refine her, not define her. She let it shape her into someone stronger, wiser, softer, but never smaller. She's not bitter, she's better, not because time healed her, but because she chose to heal, because she did the inner work, because she faced herself in the mirror and didn't flinch, because she stopped blaming the world and started asking deeper questions. She grew past needing to be right and learned how to be real, past the need to win every battle, and learned how to choose peace instead. That kind of maturity doesn't come from ease. It comes from pain. And she carries it with grace. She doesn't look like what she's been through, but not because it didn't leave a mark, because she grew around the wound. She carries the lessons, but she no longer carries the weight. She remembers, but she's not held hostage by the memory. She has allowed herself to forgive not for their sake, but for hers, because she knows that healing is not forgetting, healing is remembering without reliving. It's feeling the scar without reopening the wound. Now she walks differently, not because she's trying to prove anything, but because she's been through too much to settle for less than what she deserves. Her silence speaks volumes, her standards are non-negotiable, her boundaries are rooted in love, not fear, and her peace, it cost her too much to give away cheaply. She smiles more now, not because life is perfect, but because she's learned to find beauty even in broken places. She's learned to dance in the rain, to worship through the tears, to find stillness in the storm. She doesn't need the crowd to cheer her on. She's become her own encourager, her own intercessor, her own safe place. And yet she remains tender. She hasn't hardened, because pain didn't make her cold. It made her aware, aware of what matters, aware of who's real, aware of what peace costs. She doesn't lash out. She lets go. She doesn't chase. She attracts, because what is meant for her will not require her to lose herself. People may see her strength now, but she knows it came at a price. She's paid it in tears, in silence, in years of becoming. And she wouldn't trade it, because every lesson carved her deeper, every trial brought her closer to truth, every disappointment pointed her back to herself, and in that sacred returning, she found a woman she could finally trust, a woman who is no longer afraid to feel deeply, no longer afraid to fall because she knows how to rise. She carries herself with a reverence now, not just for life, but for her own journey. She honors the road that brought her here, the hard parts, the hidden parts, the healing parts. She doesn't try to erase the past. She lets it inform her, not dictate her future, but remind her of her becoming, and in doing so she has turned her pain into power, her wounds into wisdom, her trials into testimony. She is no longer impressed by applause, because she knows praise is temporary, but wisdom lasts. She's seen how fast people forget, but what she's learned through the fire, that stays with her, that guides her. That anchors her when everything else shifts. She stands tall now, not because she's untouched, but because she's unshaken. She has built something unbreakable within, and though she may bend, she does not break. Because her roots run deep, watered not by ease, but by tears, strengthened not by flattery, but by truth. So don't be fooled by the calm in her eyes or the grace in her walk. That's not a lack of struggle, it's a result of transformation. It's the quiet confidence of a woman who has walked through fire and come out refined, a woman who has chosen to learn, not just from the praise, but from the pain. There's a certain kind of woman who doesn't wait for the world to hand her a title. She doesn't linger at the door hoping someone notices her. She doesn't beg for space in rooms that were never built with her in mind. She doesn't water herself down to fit in. She steps out not because she's ready, but because she's willing. She steps forward not because the way is clear, but because the vision is undeniable. And when there's no lane, she creates one. This kind of woman doesn't come from ease. She's been overlooked, underestimated, dismissed. They told her she wasn't enough, wasn't ready, wasn't allowed. But they didn't know what they were dealing with, because deep inside of her was a calling too loud to be silenced, a fire too wild to be tamed. She didn't need them to open the door. She built a door. She didn't need a seat at the table. She crafted her own table. She carved space from stone and vision from dust. She walks like she's already seen the future, because she has, in glimpses, in prayers. In quiet moments when no one else believed, she saw it. She carried dreams that no one clapped for, hopes no one understood, and yet she didn't drop them. She held on because something within her whispered, this path was never supposed to be crowded. What she carried wasn't designed for the comfort of confirmation. It was designed to lead. There were seasons where she had to walk alone, not because she wanted isolation, but because her calling demanded separation. She tried to explain her vision only to be met with blank stares. She tried to get others to see what she saw, feel what she felt, burn like she burned. But they couldn't, and after a while she stopped explaining. She started building, she started sewing, she started creating, brick by brick, breath by breath. She has scars now not because she failed, but because she fought through resistance, fought through fear. Fought through every lie that told her to shrink back. There were moments she questioned herself, moments when she looked around and saw no blueprint, no mentor, no model, but even then she listened to that still, small voice that kept saying, keep going, and so she did. She didn't take shortcuts. She took the long way, the hard way, the road paved with no applause, no guarantees, just obedience, the road that taught her to trust herself, to rise after every fall, to lead even when she felt unsure, because what she was creating wasn't just for her, it was for those who would come after, for the young girl who needed someone to prove it was possible, for the woman watching silently, wondering if she could ever step out too. She understands now that she was never called to fit a mold. She was called to break it, to shatter expectations, to challenge limits, to walk in rooms and shift the temperature, not because she says much, but because of who she is. Her very presence is disruptive, not out of arrogance, but authenticity. She doesn't play roles, she shows up real, and that kind of honesty shakes things. She doesn't follow trends, she sets them, not because she's trying to be seen, but because she's driven by something higher. Her creativity flows from conviction. Her vision isn't just about aesthetics, it's about purpose. She creates with intention, she builds with fire, she dreams not in color but in calling. People ask her, how did you get here? Expecting a map. But she didn't follow one, she followed her faith, followed the quiet leading, followed the divine disruption that kept her uncomfortable enough to keep evolving. They see the success, the fruit, the finished product. But what they don't see are the days she had to speak life into her own soul, the nights she had to choose courage over comfort, the seasons when nothing made sense, but she kept building anyway. She has faced closed doors and dead ends. She has watched support vanish and confidence waver, but she has also seen what happens when obedience meets opportunity. She's tasted the beauty of alignment. She stood in the middle of the very thing she once prayed for. And every time she creates, every time she steps forward, every time she builds something new, it's not just about the work. It's about who she had to become in the process. She no longer waits for affirmation. She no longer seeks permission. She no longer entertains opinions that are too small for her vision. She has outgrown the need to be understood, because she understands herself. She knows what she's carrying. She knows what it cost, and she knows what's at stake if she stays silent. When others stay in line, she steps out of it, not to be different, but to be true. She's not chasing novelty, she's chasing necessity. She sees the gaps, the needs, the blind spots, and instead of complaining, she creates. She steps into the void, not to be a hero, but because she knows. If not her, then who? She is not threatened by other women doing great things. She celebrates them. She supports them because she's not trying to compete, she's trying to contribute. She knows there's enough room for all of them, and if there isn't, she'll make room. She's not moved by scarcity because she lives in abundance. Abundance of ideas, of purpose, of power. She is not loud, but her impact is undeniable. She is not boastful, but her presence is felt. She may not take the stage, but she changes the atmosphere, because she has become a living example of what happens when you stop waiting and start walking. When you stop shrinking and start stretching, when you stop asking for the blueprint and become the blueprint. She understands that legacy is not built on moments, it's built on movement. She's not chasing accolades. She's chasing alignment. She's building something that will outlast her, something that will speak when she's silent, something that will open doors for women she'll never meet. And that's why she refuses to shrink, refuses to stall, refuses to stop, because she didn't come this far to pause. She didn't survive the wilderness just to sit in safety. She came to create, to move, to shift, to plant flags in places where no one thought to look. She came to start something that cannot be undone, so don't look for her where the crowd is. Don't expect her to follow the trend. She's already ahead, mapping new territories, speaking new language, birthing new vision. And if you're wise, you'll watch and learn, because she's not just walking a path, she's making one. She doesn't need a title to lead. She doesn't need a platform to speak. She doesn't require a business card, a fancy introduction, or letters before or after her name. When she enters the room, it's not her resume that speaks, it's her presence, her integrity, her spirit, her calm authority. There's something about her that turns heads and settles storms, something that makes people lean in and listen without her ever raising her voice. She's not chasing recognition. She's not grasping for roles or jockeying for position. She knows that influence is not always assigned, it's assumed. It's not always announced, it's felt. She walks with a kind of certainty that doesn't come from external validation, but from an internal knowing. A knowing of who she is, and what she carries. She's not in the front of every photo. She's not tagged in every highlight reel. But when something needs to get done, people turn to her. When vision is needed, when peace is required, when wisdom is missing, eyes find her, not because she demands the moment, but because she commands it, and there's a difference. One is loud and insecure. The other is rooted and unshakable. She has learned that real leadership doesn't wear a crown, it carries a cross. Real leadership doesn't flex its authority, it sacrifices for others. And she's led not by asserting power, but by serving with consistency. Her influence is not built on charisma, but on character, not on flash, but on fruit. She doesn't lead for applause, she leads for impact. She's the kind of woman who sees what others miss, the kind who's already moving before a need is announced, the kind who holds the weight of others and makes it look light. Not because it is, but because she's learned how to carry things with grace. Her discernment is sharp. Her words are few, but they cut through confusion and bring clarity. She doesn't need a microphone to be heard. She doesn't need a spotlight to shine, because what she carries can't be contained to stages. It spills over into everyday moments. She leads in the way she mothers, in the way she mentors, in the way she shows up when it's inconvenient, in the way she listens when others only talk, in the way she sees people, not just their performance, but their personhood. She notices the overlooked. She dignifies the dismissed. She elevates without needing to be seen as elevated herself. She knows what it feels like to be unrecognized. She's been in rooms where her ideas were ignored, only to be praised when repeated by someone else. She served in silence, worked in shadows, and given beyond what was required. But none of that hardened her. It refined her. It made her sure of one thing: if no one sees her, God still does. If no one claps, the fruit will still speak. And that has become enough for her. She doesn't wait for an official role. She steps into the responsibility before the title ever comes, and sometimes it never does, and she's still faithful. She doesn't need to be named to know she's anointed. Doesn't need to be appointed by people to understand she's already been chosen by God. And because of that, she operates from a different place, a deeper place. People often mistake her humility for passivity. They think because she's quiet, she's not powerful. Because she's behind the scenes, she's not leading. But they don't understand. Her power isn't in what she says. It's in who she is. She's not trying to lead from the top, she's leading from the core. And because of that, her reach is wide, her impact is lasting, her legacy is being written in hearts, not headlines. She doesn't need to tear others down to rise. She doesn't manipulate to move up. She knows there's room enough for everyone, and if there isn't, she'll make room. She walks with such assurance that her presence gives others permission to be authentic. She lifts without crushing. She builds without boasting. She influences without intimidation. There are people who have climbed ladders, held titles, managed teams, and still don't have her level of influence, because she doesn't rule by fear. She leads by trust. People follow her not because they have to, but because they want to. They listen because they know she listens first. They follow because they know she walks what she talks. She leads from within, and the world is changed most deeply by people like her. She's not moved by applause, she's moved by alignment. If something doesn't sit right in her spirit, no amount of recognition can make it worth it. She's turned down opportunities that didn't align with her values. She's walked away from roles that would have elevated her status but lowered her standards, because she knows what you compromise to get, you'll eventually lose trying to keep. She's focused on building what lasts, not castles in the air, but foundations in the ground. She's not trying to be impressive. She's trying to be impactful, and impact is rarely loud. Often it's hidden. It's the quiet shift that changes everything, the unseen hand that guides, the whispered wisdom that redirects a life. She doesn't need the world to know her name as long as the work is done right, as long as the lives around her are better for having known her. She understands that her leadership isn't about a position, it's about a posture of strength, a posture of service, a posture of truth, and she holds that posture through seasons of joy and sorrow, of success and struggle. She leads when it's easy, she leads when it's hard, and even when her own heart is breaking, she finds a way to show up and serve. She leads from a place of depth, not decoration. Her leadership was forged in fire, in the trials she overcame, in the heartbreaks she endured, in the late nights where she cried, but still rose the next morning with purpose in her step. She learned early that leadership is not about being the loudest in the room. Sometimes it's about being the calmest. She knows that legacy is not in how many follow her, but in how many rise because of her. She's a cultivator, a builder, a birther of dreams in others. And though she may never be called CEO, director, or president, she has changed more lives than titles ever could. She leads in homes, in schools, in churches, in communities. She leads through handwritten notes and spoken prayers. She leads by how she carries herself in a world that often tries to make her shrink, but she does not shrink, She expands quietly, boldly, steadily. She's not looking for a crown. She already knows she's royalty. She's not waiting for someone to choose her. She was chosen before she ever arrived. She was appointed before she ever applied, and she's walking that out, one faithful step at a time. Her name may not be known in every circle, but those who know her know they've felt her influence, they've been touched by her spirit, they've been challenged by her example, and because of that her impact is eternal. So maybe she doesn't have the title. Maybe no one ever called her leader out loud. Maybe her name isn't on the door, and maybe she never stood behind the podium. But let me tell you, titles don't build nations. Positions don't raise generations. It's the unseen, the unsung, the unshaken women like her who carry the world on their backs and don't ask for anything in return but truth, peace, and purpose. You can keep your nameplates and accolades if it means she has to trade in her authenticity. She'll walk away from a label if it means compromising her integrity, because she knows the difference between being in charge and being effective, and let me say this clearly, she is effective. She doesn't need anyone to call her a leader. She leads. She doesn't need anyone to grant her influence. She influences through how she carries herself, through what she stands for, through how she shows up when it matters most. She is the one people call when the noise gets loud and they need truth spoken in wisdom. She's the one who can walk into a chaotic room and shift the atmosphere with nothing but her presence. She doesn't shout, but her silence speaks volumes. She doesn't impose, but her influence changes lives. What makes her powerful isn't that she controls others, it's that she's mastered herself. Her emotions don't rule her, her fears don't chain her. She has learned, through the fire and the flood, how to keep her head up when everything around her is pulling her down. She has learned to lead from the soul, not from the ego. Some may wonder, how does she keep going without applause? How does she keep showing up when no one notices? It's because she knows this isn't about them. This is about assignment. This is about calling. This is about walking so closely with purpose that even if the crowd never claps, the heavens still open. And that kind of affirmation, it's more than enough. She's a quiet storm. She doesn't make waves with her volume. She changes the tide with her vision. She is proof that real leadership is not bestowed by man, but revealed by movement. And her movement has been faithful, consistent, and undeniable. Her legacy will not be written in gold letters, but in the hearts she's healed, the people she's lifted, and the paths she's paved. So if you're listening today, and you've ever felt invisible, overlooked, disqualified because you didn't have the credentials, they told you you weren't qualified to lead, that you hadn't earned the right to influence, this is your confirmation. You don't need a title to walk in power. You don't need permission to be impactful. You don't need a name tag to carry the name above every name within you. What's in you is greater than what's against you. Stop shrinking. Stop waiting for them to notice. Stop holding back your voice because no one gave you a microphone. Speak up anyway, build anyway, lead anyway. You've been called, you've been chosen, you've been equipped, because you, woman of character, you, woman of conviction, you, woman of deep strength and even deeper stillness, you are already leading. So walk like it, talk like it, live like it. You don't need the title, you are the leader, and the world is better because of it.